Welcome to the Restore It Ralph channel. Today I've got the Dodge Dart in the work bay. Got a couple small projects, but might turn into big projects. I'm gonna tackle the dash cluster and possibly the headliner install. Overall, I love the general look of this dash. The dash pad was destroyed, so I removed it, but it's kind of got that lightweight look to it. Got a tack mount and a AFR gauge mount that kind of mimics a 68 Hemi Dart. Got radio and heater delete plate. The dash is in decent shape. I like the aluminum gauge cluster, but I hate my execution. So when I built this thing, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, I just had a couple hole saws to make this piece, and I got it super crooked. As soon as I started drilling on it, it wanted to walk across the panel, and I just got it as good as I could and then threw everything in. So I'm going to try and remake this with a little bit more skill and a little bit more precision. My oil pressure and water temperature gauge are old school mechanical style ones, so those will be the hardest ones to take out. I gotta actually unhook the oil line from the engine and the temp sender from the engine as well with the capillary tube. So I may actually switch to an electric gauge. I do love the old school aftermarket Stuart Warner mechanical speedometer, so that's going to stay. My mechanical gauges will most likely stay, and then just mount them in a more even fashion. First step is to remove the sender and capillary tube for the coolant temp gauge. That necessitates getting under the hood, which necessitates removing the hood. Mini victory. I forgot. I must have replaced that old school mechanical temp gauge with an electric one this last time. And so I totally forgot. So that should be a lot easier. I'll just unhook the oil feed line from underneath the dash. It should be ready to go. Been so long since I put this thing together, I don't really remember how I did it, so I'm gonna have to cautiously just start pulling on stuff and see how it comes out. I got this cluster kind of pulled out here so I can get to the back of the gauges, get to the back of the speedometer, and mark the wires. It shouldn't be too hateful, but I want to make sure it goes back together easy. This thing is pretty pitiful, but it worked for 10 years. I'm going to try and do better this time. I'm going to try something that I found on Amazon, which is a knockout punch set. This is more for like an electrician making knockouts in like boxes and breaker boxes and stuff like that. And I've got a piece of scrap aluminum, which I would use for my new gauge cluster. So I'm going to see if this thing will punch out a hole and see if it'll be a cleaner application than maybe a hole saw. We'll see. The way this thing works is it's got a kind of like a cup here and a shear, and basically this thing is going to be drawn into the cup and shear a hole when I take this bolt and tighten it up. So it's got a little bearing here to reduce friction, and as I tighten this bolt, it should pull the die up through the aluminum, punch it through the aluminum into this cup, and give me a nice round circle. We'll see if it works on this aluminum as well as it would on an electrical box. I used my larger size step drill, and it actually made a hole that was a little bit too big for this bolt that goes through. I'm going to try it anyways just to see how it works. When I actually use this for real, I'm going to definitely find a hole that matches the bolt so I can get everything centered up. See what I can do here. I'll also try not to slice my hand. Probably should put some leather gloves on. So I could use a little electric impact and do the same thing. Problem is, this die set is from China off of Amazon, so if I use one of those, it could tear up the threads. And I just want this thing to work for 4 holes that I need to punch with it. So I'm gonna be pretty cautious with it. I'm gonna try and pop this thing out of here without destroying the aluminum panel and without denting the hood of my 59 Plymouth, because you know, it's a workbench. That actually looks pretty nice. Problem is, this is a 2-inch die. They don't have a 2 1/8 inch die. So I want to see if my gauges will fit in there nicely, or if I'm going to have to take like a sanding roll and clean that up a little bit to where my gauges will fit through. All right, that is a beautiful hole, and I'm happy with that. And when you look at this tool, it says 2 inches, right? Unless there is some weird electrician math that I'm not really privy to, when I measure this guy, I mean, we're closer to 2.5, right? If I take my 2 1/8 gauge, it falls right through it. So that's why you always practice on this piece of scrap before you make your whole dash. I'm going to take a look at my 1.5 inch die over here. I mean, that's pretty close to 2. So I'm going to try making that hole with the 1.5 inch die. And I'm sure it has something to do with the knockouts and the little bushings that go in there to hold the wires. So that's why I should have probably measured that first before I punched a hole in the aluminum, but I didn't. And so now I'm going to try another one and see how my gauge actually fits in the hole that I knock out with the 1.5 inch punch. Realistically, I should be able to pop this whole thing out. There we go. The chunks of aluminum are inside the die. If I take this gauge, so close. All right, so that's what I was figuring on this thing, is I was gonna have to maybe take a cartridge roll and sand that out. It doesn't look like very much, so we'll see how much effort that is and go from there. For steel, this thing might not be strong enough, but for aluminum, this $38 hole punch set might be the ticket. All right, so I've taken my cartridge roll on the drill and then also a hand file and open up this hole a little bit. And right now, this gauge will fit right through there. So I think I'm gonna do most of it by hand. I think it seemed to work better. What my plan of attack is to punch the hole with the, it ends up being around 2 inches, and then I'll probably just draw with a Sharpie a line around that hole and then file it until I get that line off of there. And I'm going to measure this gauge and all my gauges and see exactly what the diameter I need to chase will be. It can't be any worse than what I did last time. It was 1/4 of an inch or maybe even more offset from one side to the other. It was terrible. I lived with it. I'm not gonna live with it this time. I made a rough cardboard template and cut out the speedometer. That's the one that I cannot change the location of because I've already cut my plastic dash bezel to fit it, which I like the position of it, so I'm okay with that. So now I've got to make sure this is going to fit in that place and then mark out the approximate location of my other gauges when I put them in. All right, trying to figure out what spacing I want for the gauges. I think I'm going to cut it out where I've got this rough circle kind of measured. I'll cut out the other one, kind of set them all in there and see if I like the spacing. I think that's gonna do. I'm gonna transfer this cardboard template over to the aluminum. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try and basically give me like this little bit of overlap. And then when I have this thing angled, when it's in the dash, I'm going to try and take this flap and kind of fold it up so it kind of contours and follows this way, and then maybe attach it to the top with a rivet or something like that. So I'm going to make it wider and then fold it in. We'll see if it works. If I have to, I can just trim it off. I never had side panels on the old one, but that was something I'd like to try. All right, I think that's going to be my dash. I guess it's time to trim it out. Luckily, I have enough material to do it 2 or 3 more times, so let's hope I don't have to start over, but if I need to, I can. All right, I guess we'll see if it fits. To even get this thing in the dash, I'm gonna have to bend this tab up. I might have to bend this one up as well, and maybe even trim it to get it in. We'll see if these work out. All right, that is not perfectly centered or set in place where it actually is going to be screwed in. I don't have any screw holes in it yet. I'm still going to do some final trimming, but that is a rough mock-up of where this thing's going to be. All right, well, I got the mounting holes drilled. I got the bezel fit to the new dash gauge mounting pad, and everything seems to fit pretty well. So I'm going to take this thing out. I'm going to put the final finish on this thing. I'm going to take some sandpaper and a Scotch-Brite and just give it a nice even brushed finish, and then I need to start reassembling it. Trying to get some of these scratches out that are the opposite way. And I'm not sure if that was me or if that was just when the metal was laying around. But this is the time to try and correct that. It'll be almost impossible to do with all the gauges in place. I'm now going to take the Scotch-Brite, kind of go lightly over it to make a nice even brushed finish. Try and keep these lines as straight as possible. For all the people judging it at the shows that I don't take it to, I think that'll be good enough for them. Good enough for me. I like it. I think it's time to assemble it. After popping it in place, I kind of like it without the factory plastic bezel on it. I may make a trim panel across the top to clean up this edge. Never mind, I think I like it better with this bezel. This is the factory bezel that I cut up originally 10 years ago to make it fit around this speedometer. That's what I started with for this cluster years ago, was this used speedometer. And then I got some other Stuart Warner gauges that somewhat match. They don't even really match each other, so it's good enough. They work great. I like the look. And now I just need to wire it up. That's something I'm going to do off camera. It's pretty boring. I'm probably going to take these bezels off and sand and repaint them. That's something that I can't do today because it's 55 degrees and raining out. So this is probably the end of this video. Pretty happy with the results of this gauge cluster compared to the old one. It's not perfect either, but this one I can live with. Well, got that fabrication project done. It was one that I've been putting off for probably 10 years now. It took about all weekend, even though I had some other stuff come up. I'm not finished yet. I'm going to clean up the wiring a little bit and clean up those bezels and repaint them so it looks a little bit nicer. But all in all, I'm pretty happy with the results. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.